Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sunil Rajguru, editor of PCQuest and your host for today's live webinar. A warm welcome to you all, and thank you for joining us for our discussion today around DevOps as a key differentiator during COVID-19. For the duration of the presentation, you will be able to listen to what our panelists have to share with us. After the presentation, we will have a question and answer session. You can do so by commenting in the chat window. Your feedback is very important for us, so do share your views with us at the end of the webinar. With that, I'll kick off today's proceedings. Yeah, so a lot of people say 2020 is the year of COVID. 2020 is the year of the pandemic. 2020 is the year of the lockdown. I disagree. I think 2020 should be called the year of digital acceleration. I would say the theme of 2020 is digital acceleration. And the reason for that is mankind rises up whenever there's a crisis. So first, a bit about myself. I'm Sunil Rajguru, editor of PCQuest magazine and CIL.com. At the end of this webinar, anytime you can get in touch with me in the following detail. So let me come back to the theme which I was talking about. Now, if you see, whenever there's a crisis, whenever mankind has a crisis, we all rise up to the occasion and upgrade the world. There is always a technological acceleration that takes place when there is a crisis. So for example, you take the last 100 years, the biggest crisis probably was World War II. So if you look at World War II, then the last great technological acceleration took place. So for example, the Nazis, they were masters of communication, and they created the Enigma machine. So the British, to counter this Enigma machine, made such advances in code breaking that they serve us today in cryptography and encryption and the internet. In fact, they came out with a Colossus computer, which could be called the world's first digital electronic programmable computer. So in a way, you could say that the computer revolution began during this time. In fact, the Nazis also managed to block the communication of the British. So to counter that, they came out with a system which they called code division multiple access, which was used after 50, 60 years in the mobile data world. Then even whatever rocketry advances happened in World War II. From there, we got the satellites, we got satellite TV, we got GPS, and even things like jet planes. So I was talking about World War II, that whatever advances took place, they took place in World War II. We had the computer revolution, we had CDMA, we had rocketry that led to GPS, that led to the satellite TV, jet planes, and even atomic energy. So now let's come to COVID-19. I feel that if World War II you had technological acceleration, COVID-19 you have digital acceleration. So for example, I don't have to tell you, we're sitting here with this webinar, doing Zoom calls all day. The amount of collaboration tools have mushroomed. There are around 10 to 12 popular tools, and they're getting better by the day. And we'll also have 3D collaboration. Then there's also the mobile workforce. The mobile workforce is going to really take on with all the mobile apps. Then also the world is going to have an upgrade in its bandwidth. Whether it is 5G or something else, we don't know. We'll also have a surfeit of drones and connected cars. Right now, the technology is there. The regulation is the only thing that is, holding it behind. So in an era of no touch and social distancing, you can be sure that drones and connected cars will grow big. Then even Industry 4.0, which will be powered by IoTs, will be big. The Internet of Things, for people who don't know, like I'm operating this laptop, it's called the Internet of People. The Internet of Things is a device which doesn't need a person to operate it. Today, we have more IoTs than there are people. So you can have IoTs, you can have billions of IoTs all over the world who will communicate with each other, and there's no need for human intervention. And the final thing that's going to power this all is artificial intelligence. So I feel that the world is going to get upgraded. So that is one upgrade. The second thing is your company you have to upgrade. Your company you have to upgrade. And then your personal skills you have to upgrade. This triple upgrade will ensure that there will be business continuity. And I feel if we do all this, we will prosper, not survive. Because I have a simple question for you. If you look at the last 100 years, you take any war, you take any economic crisis, when have we come back lesser? We always have come back more. The market has always risen higher. The technology has always accelerated. And that too will happen this time for sure. So we should be ready for that. I'd like to thank you, and I'll hand over the stage to the Datamato team. Sachin Londe, founder, Vrishank Salaskar, VP Strategic Engagement, and Samit Shetty, business leader, ISA IBM. They will share their insight into how DevOps can be a key differentiator during the current COVID-19 crisis. Over to you, Vrishank.
Yes, thank you, Sunil. Thanks for the opening note. I'm just sharing my screen. Just let me know once you see the screen.
Yeah, we can see your screen.
All right. Thank you so much. All right, so I think like what Sunil said. After every crisis, we rise, we upgrade ourselves, and that's exactly what I want to discuss today. Is how businesses and organizations and enterprises can do that, and how DevOps comes as a comes to the rescue, right? So before we do that, so a quick agenda for today is we'll talk a little bit about COVID-19 challenges. I know everybody is already seeing that those challenges, it's a reality today. So without dwelling too much on that, we'll see how DevOps can really help, and then focus a little bit on the DevOps solutions and some specific use cases that Datamato brings to the market with help of IBM tools. Before we begin, let me quickly introduce ourselves. So we're Datamato. We started in early 2012. It's been around over 8 years for us now, and our focus as of today is DevOps, helping enterprises implement DevOps practices, DevOps culture, tools and technologies that fit their unique environment. All enterprises have unique challenges, business level, market level, and we come in and help you implement DevOps. We started small, but today we have global presence. We have set up offices in 3 continents. All right, moving on. So COVID-19, as we all know, right? I mean, this is the current situation as of yesterday. And as I was collecting data for this, I just realized that every day almost 150,000 new cases are registered globally. And India is still hasn't seen the worst of it. I am hoping that we don't have to, just that we have to still prepare for it. WHO says it's going to be there for a long time. We'll probably have to just live with it. and in this kind of a pandemic situation, I assume, or I think that all of us, all of the enterprises have seen some of the key challenges that I have here, and primarily three, I can say 3 challenges. One is the people working remotely. There's a social distancing. There's lack of tighter collaboration that used to happen in the office spaces. Organizations are facing cash flow issues. They are having to downsize their workforces. People, God forbid, if catching the viruses and taking extended leaves. And most importantly, you have to cope up with the sudden change in the market. Now, earlier, traditionally we have at least a quarter, 2 quarters to predict the change. But now, within overnight or maybe a week's notice, things have changed so drastically that businesses have to find better ways of doing business, adopt to technologies, and see how they can turn themselves around to survive. And these, there are 3 main risks that we look at: business disruption, of course, delays in IT deliveries, because of so many different reasons, right? The people reason, working remotely, you're not having a lot of manual workforce. Your important people are no longer active for certain time, and last but not the least, inability to adapt or scale. Now, adapt is like, as I said, reinventing, finding out ways of how you can do things differently, and scaling up or down, right? Both. If your business demand reduces, you should be able to scale down to cut costs, and that too quickly, right? So, just like the quote here, where you have hidden costs of complexity, you have hidden costs of manual effort a lot. So manual processes and lack of automation. There's a lot of hidden costs there, which kind of shows up in situations like these. Just a quick check. Everybody can hear me, right? I just want to make sure because I'm not looking at the chat here.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
As we all know, Charles Darwin had said, you have to be able to respond to change, no matter how strong or intelligent you are as a species. And to certain extent, this applies to the businesses as well. Unless we are able to quickly reinvent or figure out ways to do things differently. And the same applies to the IT organization. Today, all companies are technology companies. Without technology, you can't really function. And unless you have ability to turn around, it becomes difficult. And that's where I want to come in and say DevOps is one methodology that can help you be ready to turn around. So companies who already have DevOps practices and culture in place are probably in an advantageous position today, as opposed to people, companies who are just starting out. So what is DevOps really? I think all of us, all of you who are attending this webinar today have in some way or the other heard about DevOps. Some of you already are implementing, some of you are long implemented and using the benefits. And there are a lot of definitions out there, a lot of books out there that trying to explain what DevOps is and how to go about doing it. This is one definition that stood out to me because it's simple. It covers the entire picture and also talks about two aspects of DevOps. A lot of people, or we generally think about DevOps as being software development and software delivery, as it's under its purview, but that's not the case. It's infrastructure management as well. Without infrastructure management coming under DevOps and us being able to really be agile and fast at that, the whole DevOps thing can fall down. The DevOps process and approach can fall down. So why is DevOps a key differentiator in this kind of a situation? And it stands out is primarily because it focuses a lot on speed, agility, automation, and unlike before where speed usually meant trade-off on quality, DevOps does not do that. So it will help you maintain the same kind of quality while getting faster or bringing the agility and speed. So not having the agility and breaking down the silos between departments, focusing on faster and better collaboration, and focus on automation. Now, automation, as I said, it not only helps you reduce cycle time and reduce lead time in your process, but also brings in the scalability and adaptability that is required. If you have the ability to quickly release your features to your customers, then you can you're in a better position to turn around your business in these kind of situations as well as compete. So now it's like a necessity. It's not like an option or a trend to jump onto. It is a necessity that you must have as an enterprise, and it's not too late to start as well. This is like everybody is upgrading using this crisis to upgrade. Enterprises can certainly take this as a time to upgrade themselves and set up DevOps practices. There are, I will say that there are around 4 main areas of automation here under DevOps. When we get into the IT software delivery lifecycle, one is build and packaging, where you're building the artifacts. Now, this is one of the most error-prone or an area where the manual actions can introduce a lot of errors when you actually deliver, and then you have to come back and start over, right? This is also an area where without having DevOps, you're not able to stress on quality, ensuring that you have policies, tolerance policies in place for your code quality, code security, and that's why DevOps speed and agility does not compromise on quality. The other area is deployment and release. This is typically where we're deploying our artifacts on the environments, and if the teams have to manually do that on multiple environments each and every time, is just compounding the time as well as the cost. And of course, another area of potential errors that can be introduced. Testing is an area where a lot of companies still struggle to bring in automation. This is typically left for the last. Once you're done with the CI and the CD, continuous integration, continuous delivery, then there's testing comes as an afterthought. There are a lot of development paradigms that have come in to do testing first kind of development, but in reality, I have seen very few companies actually adopt that approach when it comes to software development. And infrastructure provisioning, as I said, is one of the key areas that are generally kept out of DevOps for some reason, or have been up till now. Whereas now, with move to cloud and cloud native application, this kind of becomes a little easier. But we'll see that the journey to cloud is still very in its early stages for a lot of enterprises. What I want to do today is focus on, out of all these areas that we see of automation, I want to focus on 2 main areas. One is the deployment automation, where we're really automating the releases of your IT deliveries, deliverables, artifacts on environment. So environment independent rather. So your environments could be in your own data centers, on premise. You could have a private cloud, you could have a public cloud, or a hybrid situation. So some applications are running on one and the others are running on the other. And second one is the environment provisioning, where how can we automate full stack provisioning of environments to really benefit from the other DevOps CI/CD practices when it comes to software delivery. And IBM Urban Code Deploy is the leading tool in the market that helps you to attack both these use cases, important use cases in a DevOps setting. And I'll talk more about Urban Code Deploy and how it helps for in both these use cases. So let's start with deployment automation, right? Now, when we are looking at deployment automation, continuous delivery is part of it, right? So now, when you are doing your typical code build, package, and deploy kind of a cycle, having a tool that readily and easily allows you to automate that process of delivery to n number of environments. So you don't have to have your developers write scripts that are too complicated for anyone to understand later in time, right? And then figure out, okay, why certain things are being done the way they are done. UCD provides a very easy to use graphical interface to build that process and automate the delivery. It also provides hybrid application support. So what that means is, regardless of where your target application is, it could be from anywhere from a mainframe to a distributed microservices application running on a public cloud or even in your data center. So, regardless of what you want to deliver to, Urban Code Deploy will do that. So essentially what it provides is deploy anything from anywhere to anywhere. So pretty much any artifact that can be deployed to any place from any place. So Urban Code itself could be hosted or installed anywhere on premise, on the cloud, or kind of a mixed situation. Now, for an enterprise, the key thing is to have the right governance and visibility. So it provides a complete way of auditing approvals and security through your identity management providers. So that ways you have complete governance on who is doing what is being done and when is being done, and it can be reported on. And additionally, now with Urban Code Deploy, there is a community edition of Urban Code Velocity that's also available that can help report on how your entire DevOps pipeline is doing, how your value stream is performing, what kind of bottlenecks you have, which specific actions or which specific stage of DevOps, like build or test or deploy, is taking the maximum amount of time and why, and how can you do better. So all these things, can Urban Code Deploy can help you in your DevOps journey. And as you see in the figure, it pretty much integrates with no matter what your chain is, from ALM to packaging. Urban Code Deploy can help you with the deployment and release of your applications. It pretty much integrates with almost all the popular market tools available in the market. There's around 180 plus. I think the number is now 200 plus plugins that integrate with most of the CI/CD and DevOps tools that you might be already using. So just look around and find the ones that you're using here, and Urban Code Deploy can fit right in. So it's not really changing any environment for the developers, but it's still bringing the benefits of automation. Another use case that I would like to also focus on here that Urban Code Deploy helps with is full stack deployment. So Urban Code Deploy comes with a tool called as a blueprint designer. What that does is it allows you to blueprint your environments, infrastructure, and in a very easy to use visual manner. So it integrates with your VMware or infrastructure providers, OpenStack, for example. And then you can set up your entire blueprint of how the application environment should look like. And why is this necessary, right? This is primarily necessary because you don't want only your application or environment experts to have everything in their head about what it takes to set up an environment for an application. So here you will codify your infrastructure, and over time be able to version control that, right? So today I set up a specific blueprint for my infrastructure required for, let's say, my billing application or my core banking application. And then over a period of time, as the configuration changes, as we upgrade the application servers, whatever, I can keep changing this and track the version history of how things have changed. This makes one thing for better for sure is you can easily roll back. If you want to, to install an older version of the application, you have the environment code ready that you can just spin off from the tool itself, and it's completely ready, right? So not only it will help you blueprint your environment infrastructure, it will help you spin it up in a matter of minutes or hours, depending on what exactly is being done there. And on top of the infrastructure or the environment that's created, it will deploy the applications as well and bring it up to the latest version of what has been developed by your development teams. So a typical use case, and you'd say that why is this important? Because again, a typical use case here, looking at this current scenario, is that you have your ongoing work going on, and you have your environments, dev environment, UAT environment, and production environment, right? So business as usual is going with due to this something a situation something like this. You have a very urgent critical business requirement that needs to be shipped off to production within a week, and now and the environments are not available. So in this situation, what do? You either kind of put a break on what you are currently doing, bring this in, do your testing and development, and then let it go through production and resume, or halt this one. But either of them, the second option is not really possible because the business needs it in a week. So then the option to halt the other work, again, it's a cost, right? So rather, if you have something like this set up, you essentially just spin the environment in process in your CI/CD process. You can set up triggers that can automatically trigger Urban Code Deploy to set up the environment, to deploy the application. And if you have testing automation already in place, it could run the testing automation. And if it is fine, if your tests run fine, maybe you do a few manual checks, and then it moves on to pre-prod or prod, wherever it needs to go. And if the tests fail, Urban Code Deploy can go back and log bugs for the developers about some specific test cases that fail. So in a complete automated fashion, you are able to spin up the environment, do your testing, release the feature, and tear down the environment, right? Everything can happen on clicks. So this is one very specific solution for environment provisioning that we have recently built for one of our banking clients. And what it really does is it uses the IBM Blueprint Designer. And this is a very simplified diagram, I'll say. There's a lot more complexity to that. But what it essentially is doing is setting up, completely copying over or replicating, an application from one environment or one infrastructure, one data center to another. And what it does is it starts all the way from scratch. From a bare metal server, it goes and starts installing your OS, your application servers, DB servers, configures it, installs the application, brings them to its latest deployed state. Now, and this, we know that it kind of brings your migration time from months to hours or days, depending on how kind of process you have, how many manual touch points and approval points you have in the whole automated setup. But anywhere, it can save you around 70 to 90% of time just off the bat. So moving on, we looked at all these DevOps scenarios and the two main use cases under DevOps. Going forward, right, we are seeing a trend to move to cloud. Around 9% currently are using microservices, This will change, but definitely there's a lot of betting on that. Everybody wants to do that. It definitely, helps with um, again keeping your applications more stable, more scalable, because you're running them on container runtimes, right? And help with faster time to value. So you separate the concerns. There's a whole new paradigm in software development with 12-factor apps. So if you're using that kind of a methodology, you're benefiting from a lot of or overcoming a lot of challenges that we had in the traditional era. And to do this, you have to have DevOps culture in place. I mean, not just the tools and technology, but the processes and the the people need to be trained, or they have to have adopted the DevOps practices there. So I think this is what is coming, and to see what IBM has as solutions and offering when it comes to app modernizations. I'd like to invite Samit Shetty, who is with us, who is a business leader for IBM, to talk a little bit about that. So Samit, over to you.
Yeah, hi, Rushang. Thank you very much. I believe you guys can hear me.
Yes.
Okay, great. So sorry guys, I'm connected to my mobile, and hence I believe I can't show you the video on. So it will be just my voice that you'll be hearing during the session. Taking on from where Rushank left, right, in terms of that application modernization is the next thing which all enterprises are talking about, and they want to get into this journey. That acceleration piece of adopting adopting this whole application modernization journey or cloud native journey, there are three major challenges that enterprises are seeing today, right? The first challenges is on skills, in terms of understanding how to get into this whole microservices architecture, how to use the containers and Kubernetes architecture, is one of the challenges that the enterprises are facing. The second challenge is around how to go about converting their monolithical application into either container or microservices architecture. What changes needs to happen in their application? How do they go about bringing that change in? That's the second challenge that the enterprises are facing. And then obviously the third area where they are facing challenges or obstacles are when you want to set up an enterprise grade cloud native infrastructure, you have to consider those building blocks around security, compliance, governance. How is it going to happen from a day-to operation standpoint? How is this going to make your life more simple and easier going forward? These are some of the challenges that the enterprises are facing. Rushang, if you can go to the next slide, please. So, looking at those challenges of what the enterprises are facing, IBM has, introduced few cloud packs. One of those cloud packs is called Cloud Pack for Application. Now, this Cloud Pack for Application, though the name suggests Cloud Pack, but this can be run anywhere. It can be run on your public cloud like Amazon, Azure, or IBM's public cloud, or it can even run on your on-premise infrastructure. The name Cloud Pack is because this platform helps you build cloud native application and also convert your monolithical application into cloud native applications. And in terms of how it helps you do that, I'll probably cover in the subsequent slide. But on this particular slide, I just wanted to show you the three major building blocks of the cloud packs, right? So all our cloud packs, and predominantly Cloud Pack for Application, comes or is built on a very strong industry standard container platform, which is OpenShift. So OpenShift is basically using Docker as the container and Kubernetes as the orchestration layer. So we have this strong container platform which is OpenShift, and on top of that we have built a lot of operational services for doing day two operations, like your logging, monitoring, security, identity access. Now all this thing is built on top of on the OpenShift stack, and this is all built using open source technologies like ELK, Prometheus, Grafana. So all these open source technology comes in to give you a common management, dashboarding, and security framework. On top of that, we have containerized IBM software. So basically, Helm charts of IBM softwares are ready there as options within the IBM catalog, which you can readily go and deploy on this platform, right? So it's basically an enterprise grade platform which gives you the container platform, the day two operation platform, and IBM's containerized version of softwares on this platform. Now, Rushank, if you can go to the next slide. So this is in nutshell what Cloud Pak for Application gives you as a platform, right? When you deploy it. So as I mentioned, you get the OpenShift platform. You will get all the runtime options that you have. You will have Red Hat runtime options, which is JBoss, Eclipse, and all those. You will have Open Liberty as a runtime option. You will have Vast Liberty as a runtime option, which is the IBM runtime. So you will have a plethora of runtime options on top of OpenShift. You also will have a whole build environment, which you currently see as accelerators for team. Those I call it as the build, that I call it as a build environment, which is Cabanero Enterprise. So you get the entitlement for Cabanero Enterprise, which gives you um, uh, a lot of tool chains to build cloud native applications, right? And I will speak a little more detail about this Cabanero platform in the next slide. But just to cover this whole, what else do you get in Cloud Pak for Application, right? So you have on the left hand side, if you see there's a mention of modernize existing application, right? So what does modernize existing application mean? Yeah, so with Cloud Pak for Application, you get a tool called Transformation Advisor. So this basically tool helps customers who have say any Java based application. It can be traditional web WAS application, or a WebLogic based application, or any application which is built on say Node.js, or any of those platforms, right? This tool will basically run on these applications and give you a report which tells you how easy or difficult it is to convert your application into microservices. Okay. And this report gives a customer a very probably a blueprint or a starting point in terms of how to go about or how to start this journey, right? So it gives you like a red, green, yellow traffic signal kind of a report, where this application which shows green, it is a straight pass through. It will also give you a dockerized image. Once the tool runs through that application, it gives you a dockerized image so that you can just go ahead and deploy it on a container platform. If it is on an amber region, which means there are few changes that would be required in your application, and it will also point out the region or the your specific code which needs to get changed so that your application gets becomes container ready. So this tool is very helpful for customers to assess uh, uh, the readiness of their application to to move into a container environment, right? Roshan, if you can go to the next slide. So this slide is more about the Cabanero Enterprise, or the build environment that I was talking about, right? So it gives you all the development framework. So you can, your developer might be liberal with, say, Spring Boot as a framework to develop microservices, or an Angular framework for developing microservices. Cabanero helps you with these frameworks, right? So you can use Spring Boot, you can use Angular to build cloud native applications, to build microservices. On top of that, you also get as part of this cloud pack for application tool chains, you have to focus only around building microservices. How to make that, or how to package it around so that it gets deployed on the container, is taken care by the tool sets like Codewind, which is already a part of that bundle. So what Codewind does is, once the developer has finished writing the code on the or the building the microservices, it will generate the dockerized format of that code base, so that it can be easily deployed onto the containers, right? So those tool chains are also readily available as part of the platform, right? And along with those traditional tool chains of DevOps like Jenkins, you have in the whole container world, the DevOps tool chains expands to tool chains like Tectons and Apsody. So support for those tool chains are also built in as part of this platform. So that's all that I had to share about Cloudpack for application and what tools we have on that. I think I will hand it over to Sunil now to take Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, Rishank and Samit, for those thoughtful insights. So right now we are opening the house to questions. So whatever questions you have to ask, you can send through the chat window. Now, just before, while you're thinking of your questions, maybe we can just run through a few quick polls. So we'd like you to participate in polls. All you have to do is, yeah, they have begun. So just can you please vote on these polls one by one? So as you can see, we had the first poll and the results of the poll. Now we'll go to the next poll. Okay, this is the result of the second poll. You can now answer the third poll. Okay, this is the final poll.
So the results were a little interesting. I mean, I saw that the agile development was about 58%, and the people voting that they have DevOps in place was almost around the same percentage, which makes sense. But then when the poll came, do you have automated release and deployment? That poll showed it up to 66%. So I'm wondering, yeah, the people without a DevOps are using release and deployment automation, and how are they achieving that would be interesting to know. This is obvious because people usually don't think about automating, or infra as a code is now a catching up term in the COVID situation, and you guys should really think about in terms of how you can use infra as a code as a mechanism for faster delivery or faster deployment.
So
Yeah.
those were very interesting. Does Prashank and Samit have any observations on those polls?
So I don't know, I was speaking, I don't know if you guys were able to hear it.
Yeah, we heard.
Yeah.
Is
We
anyone
could hear you,
from
Samit.
the Samit and Sachin, do you have any observations on the
So
polls?
that was me, that was Samit here who was
Okay,
speaking. So that's what was
good.
my observation,
Okay.
that from a agile development standpoint, the poll were about 58%, and that corresponded to the guys that had DevOps in place, so which made sense. But then the next poll result was a little surprising, where which shot up close to about 70%, saying that they have release automation and deployment automation, right? So which meaning that people who don't have DevOps in place have release and deployment automation, which would be interesting to know how are they achieving that without the DevOps practice in place. The other piece is the last poll, which is infra automation deployment, right? And which was zero, and which is obvious because people, when they speak about DevOps, they really don't think in the line of that infra provisioning can also happen through a DevOps tool. But infra as a code is a very catching up concept in today's COVID world, because as Rushang mentioned, right, when you have to when the situation was all good and you're in the office, when you want to stand up an entire environment, right from rolling up the VM to the database to the OS, then ensuring that all the security parameters are set for that particular application, and then deploying the application. There are multiple teams, so a guy will have to go to the person who manages the vCenter, and tell him to roll out a VM, and then run to the database guy saying that, okay, please give me the hardened image for this particular application of the database so that I can deploy the database, etc., etc. And that is a time consuming process that typically takes weeks for setting up the whole infrastructure. Whereas this, when you build this whole infra as a code, just click with the click of a button, you deploy the entire stack with the security parameters pertinent to that particular application within hours, if not minutes, right? So that's, and that is very critical, right? Because in COVID situation, you're not there in the same office, you don't have the same liberty of walking up to the guy and telling him, get me this done today, and or rather do it raw, right? And that's where this whole infra as a code concept will become much more relevant and pertinent to the situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just one comment, like, absolutely, like, agree to what Samit said. In fact, I have seen that, many customers, depending on how siloed your organization is, it can take months to just get one VM up and ready before you can even work on applications.
Okay, so thank you for those insights, Vrashank and Samit. So now the questions have started coming in, so maybe we can take a few. So Vrashank, I'll ask the first question, but I believe you had to make an announcement before that. So I'll ask the question and maybe you can make the announcement. So one of the questions we have got is, where do we start bringing DevOps into our organization?
Okay, yeah, I've seen that question actually troubling a lot of enterprises, and it really depends. I would suggest that you know your landscape, you know your processes, where it's most time consuming, and where you can see the most quick benefit, quick ROI that you can yourself realize and sell it up to the management, and then kind of expand the purview of the entire DevOps approach or the platform. Because a big bang approach will typically it take a long time before you start realizing. So going step by step makes sense. You can I've seen people do it on the continuous integration side as well as the continuous delivery side. So it really depends. We generally recommend doing an assessment of your overall landscape and identify the low hanging fruit and then start from there. So anyone else on the panel, if you want to add to that, feel free, please.
Yeah, so DevOps is, I would say, pieces of all put together, right from build to CI, CT, and then CD, right? Which is continuous integration, continuous testing, and then continuous deployment. Now, how do you bring it to your organization? Now, what I've seen work with our customers who have adopted DevOps in a big ways, you need to have your application owners onboarded with you, right? Without that, I've seen it just doesn't work. So if your business guys are willing to invest in a platform which will help them bring changes or change request faster to the market, those are the application that you want to first onboard and show the value, and then start bringing the rest of them as you progress forward.
Absolutely, and thanks, Samit, for bringing up that point. Onboarding people. I mean, typically, or what we have seen and what we'd recommend also is that you start the onboarding process much before you actually onboard the technology and the solution and the platform. Because that is the most time consuming part of the whole DevOps journey. People need time to change and understand the new way of working, get trained in the new platform if it their environment is changing. So yeah, that was my 2 cents.
Yeah, so there's another question. I think this one is targeted at Samit. It says, which vertical do you see using DevOps and infrastructure as a code more aggressively?
So infrastructure as a code has to come in from the top. So the bank that we have deployed this came from the CIO's office, because he was shifting, or rather they were moving from one data center to another, and he realized that if he had to do this manually, it would have taken him months, and that's how it came down, right? So because for obvious reasons, there will be political push, etc., right? Because now you're bringing the entire control to the DevOps platform, right? When you're making infra as a code, and hence there will be frictions within the group, because you'll have your database team, you'll have your VMware team, and all those guys. You'll have your your bare metal guys. So in fact, where we have deployed this in the bank, we are also detecting. So as soon as the bare metal is put on the network, we detect that bare metal, and then we start provisioning it, right? So this has the sponsorship has to come from the top, for infra as a code, because as I said, it will cut across functions.
Okay. So we have actually many more questions, but we are running out of time. Maybe I'll take one last question. So there's one comment which says that DevOps is good, but many still fear one platform can make them dependent.
Sorry, what does that? What was the last part? One platform.
DevOps is good, but many still fear one platform can make them dependent. I think this is more of a comment than.
So if you see the whole tool chains that Rushank mentioned,
Yeah.
I said DevOps is, from a concept standpoint, it's journey, right? It's build phase, it's the integration phase, it's the testing phase, it's the deployment phase. So these are the, if I have to cut down DevOps into sections, these are the broad sections, right? You can have uh, different tools for the during the in the build section. You can have a different tool set in the integration section. You can have a different tool set in the testing section, and so in the deployment section. So the restriction, there is no restriction to one single use of tool in each of these sections, but bringing all of them together and making it work is where the whole DevOps platform will play a role, right? And which is where UCD and urban code velocity helps you play that role, helps you with that stitching the different tools and heterogeneous tools together, so you don't have lock into one particular technology or so, or a vendor.
Okay. So there was just one thing related to that. Somebody has asked, is setting up tools enough to adopt DevOps?
No, that is just one piece of it. You'll have to, DevOps is about process, and people, as Rushank mentioned, right? Change is very difficult. So people have to get used to the new way of doing things. And once they see they adopt to this change, they then start seeing the value of these tool change. But the first bottleneck that we see is adoption, people resistance to change. So process is very important other than tool. Rushank, if you want to add.
No, that's absolutely right. Process and a complete, journey of transformation that needs to be like a top down. Everybody, there are a lot of stakeholders there. You have to bring all stakeholders on board. Setting up to, I mean, unfortunately, whatever discussions I've had with so many prospects and customers, people still do believe that setting up tools is going to be enough. But it's a great question, because that's a pitfall to avoid, and it's not the tools that are only going to help you become DevOps ready or start using DevOps.
So I think we had many more questions, but we have run out of time. So Rushank, I think you had one announcement to make. After that, we can.
Yeah, announcement as in, I just wanted to thank all the attendees for joining us today for this webinar, and all the attendees, we would be getting gift voucher from Datamato. So I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. That's it.
Okay. So anyway, thank you, Rushank and the Datamato team for such a insightful PPT, and I think we had a great discussion towards the end. So on behalf of PCQuest, Datamato and IBM, I would like to thank all of our participants today for joining this webinar. Please don't forget to fill the feedback form. Your feedback form is very important for us. We hope you found it useful. Have a great evening, everyone.